Bueno, señoras y señores, bienvenidos a mi canal. Hoy tenemos a un invitado muy especial. Él es uno de los guitarristas más importantes en la industria ahora de la música, del rock, del heavy metal. Así que, bueno, él es un gran guitarrista de Nueva York. Él ha tocado junto a Whitesnake, a Trans-Siberian Orchestra, Share, un montón de otras bandas como Night Ranger, Foreigner, The Turtles, Jeff Scott Soto. Así que lo vamos a presentar. Él viene directamente de Nueva York para estar con nosotros. So, I would like to introduce to you one of the greatest guitar players in rock and roll music right now. Here's the one and only Joel Hoekstra. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Did I say your last name right?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a Dutch name, but I'm obviously American for several generations. But I think Hoekstra, maybe Hoekstra. But I've sort of Americanized it and given up on that because
Okay.
I think phonetically, if you pronounced it in English and you were American, you would say Hoekstra. So that's just what I go with now.
Excellent. Cool. So the first question that I have is, let's talk about your beginnings. When and why you decide to become a guitar player?
My parents were classical musicians, so they had me playing cello and piano at a very young age, and I really wasn't into music at all at a very young age. I was kind of into baseball and wanted to be a sports guy, and then I heard AC/DC and saw AC/DC on the early days of MTV, and I thought Angus Young was the coolest, and I wanted to be him. So I asked for a guitar, and here I am.
Excellent. Excellent. And which are your main influences on guitar?
That's a really long list, man. In the early days, it was very much heavy metal, hard rock bands, but I've got a pretty open mind and been through a lot over the years. So I would say, if I had to give you the brief list, in the early days, AC/DC, Black Sabbath, Ozzy, Iron Maiden, Dio, Scorpions. Then lighter bands like Foreigner, Journey, Boston. And I'd say progressive bands like Rush and Yes. Definitely all the guitar stuff like Yngwie, Vai, Satriani, Steve Morse. All that stuff was a big influence on me. Queensryche was a band I loved a lot when I was younger. So, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty long list. And definitely I see in the background you got Pink Floyd, that the classic rock stuff for me was like Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, The Doors. Those were my favorites. Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
So anything in there was really big with me too. So yeah, just kind of, a very long list.
Amazing. Amazing. What can you tell us about your guitar teacher, TJ Hambrick?
TJ was that, an amazing thing that had happened in my life was meeting him, because I was taking guitar lessons at a small store in a mall in a small town in Illinois, and they decided to hire a teacher. A couple of us were getting to the point where we wanted to learn solos and theory, and the guitar instructor there was more of a guy who taught songs, and he wasn't that type of player, so they hired TJ. He was in a local band at the time, and this is even before he was really even doing the 8-finger technique. He just kind of was starting it out during that time. So I mean, it was the very early days. He taught me how to bend, properly and things like that. So it's like a way before people would realize, but it was amazing that happened, and then we just stayed in touch over the years and still are friends. And so he's a huge influence on me in many ways. I mean, he helped me. He taught me all the tapping stuff when I was younger, so that obviously was a big influence. But hung out with him when I lived in LA for a couple years, and were friends during that time. So very influenced by his stuff with Brett Garsed and all of that, and then even after that, he really helped me out in making my first instrumental albums, because he recorded Virgil Donati and Rick Fiorabracci at MI for me, and so that was that really helped to speed that along. That was how I met those guys in the first place, was through TJ and Brett.
Mm-hmm. Incredible. And how was your experience going to GIT?
It was great. I was pretty young and green. I played a lot of guitar. I had had a private teacher already who basically showed me a lot of the curriculum in the Chicago area before I went out there. And so, to be honest, I spent a lot of time kind of just in my apartment out there recording. I was not a very good like by the book student that when you go to a school. I would do it differently nowadays. I would play with everybody and do everything. I think being young, I was kind of intimidated by some of the stuff, and you kind of you close it off, and don't do certain things. Like I didn't go after playing jazz when I was there because I was, oh, that's not my thing. That's not my thing. Now I'd do it. I'd do it in a heartbeat, just because I wouldn't be threatened as much as just knowing that I wouldn't be good at it and would just laugh about it and be like, let's just go, do my best. Um, but anyway, I had a great time. It was a great year, 12 months. I would recommend going there to anybody. I mean, it was a great experience to go away from home and go to Hollywood. My first time really out of my area so it's quite an adventure.
Can't imagine. I have a lot of friends that went to GIT. One of my friends is Brian Young. He was the guitar player for David Lee Roth, and he tell me that. And I have another friend. He went to the Drum Institute of Technology.
Yeah, to PIT.
PIT. His name is I can't remember right now. It's Brian Tichy.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. Oh, I didn't even know Brian went to PIT, but Brian and I are friends and know each other. But yeah, as I said, I probably wasn't the ideal student in a lot of ways, but I played a lot of guitar during that time. I was spending a lot of time working on my stuff, recording and practicing, and I was definitely practicing, 6, 8 hours a day back then. That definitely stands out as one of those years where I played the most guitar. Um, but I probably could have done better in terms of taking advantage of what was at MI. And nowadays when you get older, yeah, I still look back on that as one of the most magical times in my life because you're young and you don't know what your life is going to bring you, and you're in Hollywood, California, and I mean it was really fun in a lot of ways. So I was so poor, I had no money. At all. But it was just a great time. So fun.
Awesome. You were before you went to New York, including when you went to New York. Obviously, you were where you living before you went to New York.
The suburbs of Chicago.
Okay.
So I was kind of just a suburban kid, and I think that was a big part of it. When you grow up back then there was no YouTube or no internet really. So I mean, the only people you had to compare yourself against were the couple of people you knew that played guitar in your neighborhood or went to your school or whatever. So those were the people that you'd say, oh, this and that. And then the first day you go out to GIT and you sit in the room with 300 other guitar players or whatever, that's kind of freaks you out. You go like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of people like me out there that are trying to do this. So anyway, that was a real eye opener, and I think in many ways I just was young, man. Young and insecure. You sit in a room with that many guitarists, and you feel like, oh my God, like it's intimidating.
Yeah. What happened when you traveled to New York and you started doing this gig about Janis Joplin?
Yeah, so that was about 10 years after MI. I went back from MI. I graduated from there and worked a year in LA at a recording studio called Cherokee, and then I moved back to the Chicago area and taught a lot and started to play with various bands around the area. And then one of the girls I was playing with, Kathy Richardson, she got this role playing Janis Joplin in that show, Love Janis, right? So I was her guitar player, and so I ended up getting in the band. I'm summarizing; it's more a longer story than that, but I ended up getting in the band for the New York run. So I came out here, kind of telling my friends back home, "Oh, I'll see you in 2 months or whatever." But it ran for 2 years out here. So by the time it closed, I felt like I was living out here, and yeah. So I've been in New York now. I think it's over 20 years, which is
Wow,
amazing.
wow, that's a lot of time. Uh, can you tell us how was your experience playing with Night Ranger and then Rock of Ages on Broadway and then the Trans-Siberian Orchestra?
Yeah, Night Ranger was a great opportunity for me. I got to know Kelly Kagi, the drummer, through playing in Jim Peterick's band in the Chicago area. So we would do these shows once a year where I was in the house band, and Jim's guests would come sing their hits, and Kelly was always one of those people. So anyway, I found out that Jeff Watson wasn't with the band anymore and said, "Hey man, I would love a shot at it." And it turned out like just after I told them that they needed somebody to fill in on a show, and I got the opportunity to go in and do that, and then got the gig, and then I had a great 7 years with those guys. Real fun time in my life because I think I hadn't really done a whole lot before that, and so. Just a really great opportunity, great bunch of guys. And then Rock of Ages came shortly after that, and that was something that I had gotten through subbing on pit stuff here in New York, oddly enough. My friend who lives a couple blocks from me plays in the pits, like the traditional Broadway musician. And I would always just learn whatever books he had just so I could actually kind of stay sharp on reading music and and have the opportunity to go sub on those gigs. And then it turned out one of the people that I got to know through that got the gig as the music supervisor for this new show called Rock of Ages that was coming to New York, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, he ended up hiring me and didn't know I was in Night Ranger at the time. And amazingly enough, Night Ranger's song was in the show, and so was Whitesnake's song, as it turns out. So anyway, it was definitely something that changed my life. I started that era of Rock of Ages as a guitar player who had just joined Night Ranger, had a little bit of money in the bank, and basically most people didn't know who I was. To the end of that 6 years, adding TSO into that, and then joining Whitesnake, and feeling like people knew who I was, and I had some money in the bank and was doing better. But so that really did change my life, that run. And then TSO. That's been since 2010, so that's basically about 2 years after joining Night Ranger, and that was, I got the opportunity to audition because a couple friends in the band recommended me when Alex Skolnick needed to take a year off, and so I basically I just auditioned and got the gig, and then I was a little like, oh man, do I take it because I've got Night Ranger and I've got Rock of Ages already, and what happens when I go do TSO? How do I sub out of Night Ranger? I hadn't done that yet. So thankfully they were cool with that, and basically those 2 months every year I would take off and not be with the band. And so yeah, it ended up becoming a period there of about 6 years where I did all three of those: Night Ranger, Rock of Ages, and TSO. So I would basically, blink and I was playing. I mean, I was constantly on the stage in that
Right.
era.
I have a friend that we made a song like 2 weeks ago. We made a tribute song to Ronnie James Dio. We made Heaven and Hell, Black Sabbath, and he's a singer from California. His name is Joe Reda, and I don't know
Oh
if
yeah, Joe's amazing. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. He
He sings a mean Dio, man, for sure.
he was playing in the Trans-Siberian Orchestra also. And
Yeah. Joe did TSO West. So yeah, we didn't get to tour together because they send out two touring bands simultaneously, the East and the West, and I'm in the East, and Joe toured with the West. But we know each other. He's a great dude and amazing talent.
yeah, it's true. When did you start playing for Whitesnake, and how does it feel playing with the band, with the members?
2014, I joined Whitesnake, and yeah, it's great. I mean, I love it. We've had the same lineup since I joined, which is great. We've had the same guys around for 6, 7 years or whatever. So, we all get along and like each other, and we all have our differences in terms of our styles or approaches, and certainly our levels of success as well. You got guys like David Coverdale and Tommy Aldridge, I mean, like, Mount Rushmore kind of guys of rock, and then guys like me who are just kind of, still making a name for themselves to a degree or whatever. So, but we all get along, and we have a good respect for each other and do well. And David's a great boss. It starts at the top with that stuff. I mean, he's a good guy, and he's been really good to me in this time. So I'm looking forward to hopefully doing more and hopefully some live shows here.
Yeah. So when Whitesnake is gonna go back to the stages? I mean, you have dates?
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing that needs to come from the band and come from David. I think everybody knows that. I can't really make any announcements in that regard, but we'll see. Things are looking better than they were a few months ago.
Yeah, it's true. Let's talk about your latest album, Running Game. For all the people out there that never heard this album before, what can you tell us about this record? I mean, I already heard the record and I love it. There's a song called it's Heart Attack, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that song.
Oh, cool. Thanks, man.
Amazing.
Yeah, I would say, this is Joel Hoekstra's 13 is really my rock side project. I had some instrumental albums out years ago, and then I wanted to put this stuff out, and I just want to make it sound like a band. I'm not looking to make it sound like a guitar player's album with long solos and all that stuff, or not trying to be progressive or anything like that. Just kind of like solid rock stuff that made me want to start when I was younger, and so that's where I'm coming from with it. I always say stylistically, it's Dio-ish at its heaviest and Foreigner-ish at its lightest, and it's got some great classic rock musicians on there: Vinny Appice on drums, Tony Franklin on bass, Russell Allen singing lead vocals on this one, and Jeff Scott Soto helped me out with the background vocals, and Derek Sherinian on keyboards.
Amazing. Yeah, it's a great album. The other question that I have is, are you giving online lessons for around the world, or just?
Yeah, I've been doing during COVID. That's kind of been my main thing. I mean, I've really been making my living doing teaching lessons and doing sessions and then cameos, all those personalized greetings, and that's kind of been the way I've kept money coming in. And it's been fun. I mean, I've had a good time. Yeah, I have students right now from all over the place. It's kind of amazing, I've had students in this time from Colombia, from Russia, from Japan, let's see, Hong Kong, I think right now Turkey.
Wow.
So yeah, all over the place. It's been really cool, So I've enjoyed it. It's been good. It kind of makes me think about some of the things that I've been playing over the last 10, 20 years that I haven't been teaching. I used to do a lot of it as well years ago. And it's kind of weird because I'm like back into it after many, many years of not doing it. So it's kind of making me re-examine some things, which is cool. And I've been grateful to have anything to do for a living. I haven't just been sitting around looking at my calendar going, someday I'm going to get out and play live shows again. I've still been kind of really working my butt off, man. I mean, between all that, I still finished my record and did a bunch of those quarantine jams, So I've been really, really busy during this COVID era, like busier than normal in many ways. So just like, it seems like nonstop work,
And for our audience here in Argentina, how a guitar player can get in touch with you for the lessons?
You could just go to my website, joelhoekstra.com, and then you hit contact, and then that's my email, just info@joelhoekstra.com. And yeah, I've been carrying a little over 30 students a week for really about a year now. So it's been good. I mean, it keeps me on my guitar a lot, man. I play guitar at least 6 hours, 5-6 hours a day, So yeah, in that regard, it's great. And then do sessions and things like that to stay sharp. And so yeah, otherwise maybe I would have struggled more with motivation during it. So it's kept me like focused on something.
Excellent. What are the most important things to be a professional guitar player? Things that we have to keep in mind. I mean, not only a guitar player, but a musician in general.
Yeah, I would say the main thing is just to do whatever it takes and just don't ever stop. Don't ever just don't stop, and just remember that you know, you have to outwork everybody. The more you put into it, the more you get back, you know. And that's also the reason for my limitations, you know. If had I been somebody who practiced 10 hours every day during my life, I probably would be more successful than I am right now, you know. It's kind of always comes down to that, and the ability to relate to people. You don't want to be playing 10 hours a day and then, you know, whatever, have a mental meltdown and then throw it all away, you know. So you got to find the balance somewhere. But I say we all kind of end up where we're meant to be through our series of decisions as well. You know, you just try and do your best with it and don't ever stop. I mean, that's in the end, that's really what it comes down to. For me, things didn't open up and feel successful until like my late 30s, you know, like. So it took a really long time, but I was busy that whole time. I played nonstop, taught and played my whole life, you know, but things didn't really get to the point where it was like, oh, people know who I am and I'm in a band people have heard of and all that stuff until my late 30s.
I was watching some of your other interviews, and you said that you can be successful from one day to another. I mean, it's like a process. You have to
Yeah,
make things.
yeah. I think in the end, that's really, yeah, it's a good point, man. It really does come down to one day at a time. You know, it's like, are you productive every day? Like, what did you do to be productive today? And then I tell all my students that too. I'm like, you know, the key to this whole thing is to play your guitar every day. It's not practicing 3 hours one day and then missing 4 or 5 days. I'd rather you practice 10 minutes every day, you know, and just keep doing that, because if you keep doing that the rest of your life, you're going to be good, you know.
Yeah.
And especially considering one day a week you'd have the lesson and you'd be with me for 45 minutes, right? So you know, you think about it, it's just about consistency, right? So a lot of people, you know, go in really hard and then they burn out, and you know, they don't have the ability to maintain it, I guess. I think it's kind of just thinking about every day, like, what have you done productive? Did you do something to move yourself forward?
Mm.
And one way or another, I do that every day.
Yeah. The last question of this interview that I have is, what kind of advice can you give to the musicians here, especially the guitar players in Argentina?
I would just say just work really hard, man. You know, try to put in the best you can every day. And I mean, it's kind of the stuff we just covered, you know,
Hmm.
and just try to be good to other people, you know, especially the people that you want to work with or you are working with. And I mean, I think that's a big part of it. But in the end, you know, the work, you can't fight the truth, man, when people work hard, you know. When you know, eventually you'll win if you do that. If you're just working and working and working and working, you're gonna win.
Exactly, it's true. So it has been a tremendous honor for me making this interview. I mean, you are one of my favorite guitar players ever.
Oh
And
wow, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
I was watching the shows of that metal show, and Whitesnake and Trans-Siberian Orchestra, all the things that you did, and it's incredible, incredible, very professional work, and an amazing guitar player. So thank you
Uh,
for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it very much.
All right, Joel, it has been a tremendous honor, and we keep in touch.
Awesome. All right, buddy. Have a good one.
All right, bye bye. Take care.
Cheers. Bye bye.